And Neil, you tweeted shortly after leaving the Gridiron dinner and wrote this, quote, just out of the gridiron, me listening to Mike Pence giving an absurd speech about how important it was to find out the truth about January 6th. Left unsaid was that he is filing ridiculous court actions about how afraid he is to tell the truth about January 6th with bogus privilege assertions. Explain.
Well, first of all, Joe, I love the Gridiron. There's not enough humor in my town. Frankly, there's no humor in my town. There's very little bipartisanship. So I love the idea of the Gridiron. I'm grateful for them for having me. But there are things that happen there that cross the line, and Mike Pence is chief among them. I mean, come for the homophobia and stay for the sheer audacity of the invertebrate. And this guy was audacious in ways you can't believe. I mean, he gives a serious speech about January 6th and how Donald Trump endangered him and his family personally, and how important it was to get to the truth about what happened on January 6th. All that's good, but you can't just give that speech behind closed doors, especially when at the courthouse doors, you're filing these bogus immunity documents to prevent you from having to tell the truth. And that's what he's doing. He's claiming speech or debate immunity, that he shouldn't have to testify and tell the truth about what happened on January 6th in formal legal documents. So I mean, Eugene's right that it's like, that there's that there is a lane open for him, but it's the lane of the spineless. I mean, that's the only lane. I mean, this is a guy who ran around the Gridiron afraid of running into any vertebrates, and it's, to be fair, he did one thing right on one day on January 6th. But even that, he can't be comfortable with. He runs away from it instead of owning it. The guy single-handedly saved our democracy on January 6th. You'd think he'd want to take credit for it, but he doesn't, because instead he's trying to calculate and triangulate. I mean, in more ways than my son who took the SAT on Saturday. It's pathetic.
So Eugene, let's talk a little bit more about the politics of this. It seems in Pence's efforts to please everyone, he's pleasing no one, because you're right. I mean, he doesn't want to be seen on camera condemning Donald Trump, but he's already lost the MAGA base. They already don't forgive him for what he did on January 6th. But yet there doesn't really seem to be an appetite for him to be the Trump alternative either, at least for now. That's Ron DeSantis. I suspect we will be seeing him on the road soon enough. But what possible path is his team trying to chart?
Yeah, and that's the thing, is what they keep telling us, and Adam Wren, our fabulous colleague at Politico, wrote a piece kind of getting into the room and into Pence world as they took on Donald Trump. And one of the things that someone said was basically they think that he can be the adult in the room, and that is what he wants to do. What that looks like and how that shakes out is very unclear. If this is the first shot across the bow, does he continue to do this publicly? Is he very serious about it? And as Neil is saying, does he actually take credit for saving democracy on January 6th? He talked about on Saturday that he didn't have a choice, that he did the only thing he was allowed to do. Is he going to take that to Iowa and New Hampshire and to all of these other states? Specifically on this debate stage, if he is to jump in with Donald Trump, and what does that look like? Because this is a man, and I've talked to people who worked with him while he was in the White House, they say he is not a man who wants conflict, right? He is not someone who wants to be fighting on a debate stage back and forth with Donald Trump. And so he is going to have to find a way to do that. He's going to have to find the chutzpah to actually continue this fight that he started on Saturday.
Well, and I do want to underline the fact, something that Neil said. It's important. It's an important fact. And one of these facts that it's kind of strange to say, but after it. That said, I do want to say, let's underline the fact, Mike Pence helped save American democracy on January 6th. He stood in the gap on one of the most dangerous days in the history of American democracy. But I mean, I can't even believe we're there, Neil. We are, though, because again, it's he's being too clever by half, right? You can't have it both ways here. This guy is either a scourge, Donald Trump, and a threat to American democracy, or he's not. And you can't be afraid of offending a few of his voters if that is the truth that Mike Pence actually delivered. Thank God. At the Gridiron.
That's 100% right, Joe. And, when I say that he single-handedly helped save our democracy on January 6th, I do believe that. But I also want to say, he just did the bare ministerial minimum. He did it under enormously complicated conditions. But no one sitting in his shoes for the last 200 years would have done anything else. I mean, the law on this was clear. He had no place to maneuver. Judge Michael Ludig, a very prominent conservative judge, had been advising him and saying, look, whatever Trump's telling you, there is zero legal basis for trying to throw out the election as vice president. That would be crazy to allow the vice president to pick the next president. That just can't possibly be what American democracy is about. But look, I think Pence should get credit for that day, and I think he should be taking that credit instead of running into the shadows and afraid of mentioning it again. So I'm glad he's mentioned it. I do think, though, he's got to act and walk the talk now. And if he believes this, if he really believes January 6th was such a threat to our democracy and that we need to get to the bottom of what happened, he has a very simple solution. He can file a legal document today that says, I take back these ridiculous filings and I'm going to tell the truth to the American people.
And he was right about American democracy being at risk on that day. And also, of course, his own family at risk on that day because of Donald Trump. And that's something he also admitted the other night. Former acting Solicitor General Neal Katyal and Morning Joe's senior contributor Eugene Daniels, thank you both so much. We really appreciate it.